Today's episode is about a brand name that everybody knows and most people love. Apple. The company that redefined the way we interact with technology seems to be stumbling when it comes to AI. It all began in 2024 when Apple announced Apple Intelligence, promising to weave AI into every single device in the world. Instead of a groundbreaking leap forward, Apple released the iPhone 16 in September 2024, which was full of half-built features and vague promises. More recently, Apple execs at Cupertino admit that their efforts with Siri are actually embarrassing, and since then have pulled advertisements off TV advertising false features. This isn't a problem because Apple are flip-flopping in the media. It's a problem because they could easily become the next BlackBerry or Nokia, devices that just couldn't keep up with changing consumer expectations. But with Apple, it could be even more life-threatening, because AI represents a fundamental shift from their previous strategy of creating amazing hardware and beautiful software. In today's episode, I'm going to break down exactly why I think this could happen, and what, if I was Apple, I would do about it. This is In the Loop with Jack Horton. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy. So at the WWDC 2024, Apple made a big splash in the world by announcing Apple Intelligence, which is essentially a branding umbrella for its plans to integrate AI into pretty much every single device possible. Now, obviously, thinking about it like that, the promise is pretty huge. An era where AI could feel like a sci-fi film, connected to literally every single device that you carry around, which is a phone or a tablet or a laptop. But the reality so far has been far from transformative. You know, when the iPhone 16 launched in September 2024, it was supposed to be built from the ground up for Apple Intelligence. So it's running on iOS 18, yet when it was released, there was literally pretty much no AI features. There was no big updates to Siri, and instead we got a series of, minor software updates. A beta for writing tools and notification summaries, which actually had a bunch of problems. Then they called it Genmoji, so a feature that allowed you to generate new emojis, and also an image playground that basically allows users to generate cartoon images. And none of this has been received very well, and it's not really lived up to any of the hype that Apple themselves went and generated. And if you go to YouTube, you'll see video after video after video on Apple Intelligence. There's literally billboards everywhere all over the world doing the exact same thing, which is talking about Apple Intelligence like it exists. They even released this huge advert that had to be pulled. I think it's worth taking a listen. It's quite funny.
Siri, what's the name of the guy I had a meeting with a couple of months ago at Cafe Grinnell?
You met Zach Wingate at Cafe Grinnell.
Hey!
Zach!
Oh, wow, I didn't think you'd remember me.
Yeah, of course. As soon as I saw you, I'm like, it's Zach. Nobody walks like Zach.
So Bella Ramsey in that advert literally advertises features that do not exist. And there's even leaks from Apple saying that the marketing department just wanted to make noise about things that they wanted to make noise about, despite them not being ready yet. And Apple are actually being sued right now for those adverts because it's false advertising. And it gets worse. Earlier in 2025, a widely publicized internal all-hands meeting was held at Cupertino, so where Apple's headquartered. And their senior director, Robbie Walker, very bluntly stated his view, which is that it's very ugly and embarrassing, their attempts to bring out and improve Siri. Remember, this is a company that's known for its meticulous, controlled product launches that makes the world go absolutely nuts. And Bloomberg's Mark Gurman has reported that Tim Cook has completely lost all confidence in Apple's head of AI. So although they're public blunders, there's deeper reasons why we should all be quite worried about Apple. And I'm going to break them down for you. So first off is the hardware versus software dilemma. So Apple's strength and long-term strategy basically could become a weakness because hardware and software behaves very differently. So I'll explain what I mean. Apple typically enter a market quite late, especially when products in that category suck, and then they absolutely dominate the market by creating a really incredible product. And when it comes to hardware, you can usually afford to wait a long time. But with software, especially AI software, I'm not sure you can actually wait. Software needs to evolve really, really fast. So it's a very iterative process. You don't wait for a long time and then release everything at once. You build something, you learn, you refine, you learn, and you refine. And while companies like Google and Microsoft are integrating AI into all of their products, Apple is stuck still in this paradigm, it seems, of release it late but make it perfect. And in the AI era, perfection is probably a moving target. Now, I could be wrong. And Apple could just bring something out that completely shocks me. And to be honest, I hope that they do. But right now, it's not looking like that is a possibility. Another reason I'm quite worried is because of their strategy around vertical integration. So if I explain that a little bit more, one of the core reasons people choose Apple is its user experience, and that's achieved through a tight integration of its software and its hardware. So this vertically integrated system where every piece is designed to work perfectly together, and it's enabled Apple to create truly incredible products. But I think that advantage is being eroded. Other phone manufacturers have made massive improvements in the hardware. I think the gap between hardware quality of Apple and other competitors has narrowed a lot over the last few years. You know, today, as much as I hate to admit it, Android devices or Windows phones or even emerging kind of Chinese brands are producing hardware that, although isn't as good as Apple, is still really, really good. Now, you could still argue that there is still a major difference, which is that vertical integration between hardware and software. So other hardware manufacturers still license the likes of Android as an operating system, which, as anyone that's ever used an Android device knows, is very clunky at times. So Apple's strength has always been that it's got this perfect integration between hardware and software, which creates that incredible experience. But, and it's a massive, massive but, that as a strategy is only relevant in today's paradigm. When something completely new appears, let's say large language models, nobody can know what's going to happen in the future. For example, imagine a future where your phone no longer relies on traditional software touchscreen interfaces, but suddenly is controlled completely by super smart, context-aware AI. So I mean AI that knows what screen you're on, well, all of your previous data, has access to all your apps, and doesn't need lots of software interface. So those companies that are still producing good mobile phone hardware, but then licensing software that often makes their experience overall a bit crap, could suddenly leapfrog Apple by having an AI-driven experience that completely redefines how people want to interact with technology. And companies that get this right could suddenly create a new type of device that becomes that control center to most of our lives, just as the mobile phone is today. And to create these sorts of devices, it will require a completely new way of thinking about design and user experience. And the reason I'm so bullish on this is because Mindset is doing exactly this with clients. We're actually launching a beta program at the moment, which is going to enable customers to connect their code base to agents. So essentially AI agents can control their entire product via conversations. And soon I expect user interface to be completely controlled or even created on the fly by AI. What do I mean by this? So most of us are interacting with devices through touchscreens, icons, and some form of menu. But what happens if AI becomes the interface that just generates those new icons or appears and gives you what you need in that moment? So it's completely dynamic and will auto-generate a search bar suddenly, or a table full of contents and information. And if this future does happen, suddenly the traditional strengths of that vertical hardware and software integration that Apple has always had completely cornered in the market could disappear. Again, this might seem far-fetched and you may say I'm getting overexcited, but whether it takes 5 years or 10 years, I bet a lot on this type of experience becoming possible. And you may think I'm being harsh with Apple here, and for all we know, they could be creating all of these things we're talking about. But the reason I have a high bar for Apple is because they are so famous and were previously incredible at reimagining an entire experience. And for those of you that haven't been on the inside or as part of a process of trying to reimagine an entire way of doing something, it's really hard. It's really hard to reframe how you think about the world. And AI is going to force Apple to do all of this all over again. And right now, I've seen no evidence that Apple has retained any of its previous ability to flip an entire industry or way of doing something on its head. And this comes to the final reason that I'm probably quite worried about Apple, which is whether they're just losing their mojo. To understand this a little bit more, if you look back at Apple's history, Steve Jobs was relentless. And importantly, he was just a through and through product person. He cared so deeply about creating incredible products and was involved in every single aspect of its creation. He wasn't afraid to kill his biggest product and cannibalize his own market to pave the way for something even better. So consider the iPod. When Steve Jobs realized the iPod, though revolutionary and also Apple's biggest and best-selling product, was going to be probably replaced by some sort of mobile phone, he quite literally did not hesitate to destroy his own product line. As I said, I've spent many hours researching Apple's processes and ways of thinking, or reading about Johnny Ive's design philosophies and the way Jobs was in the studio every single day, and how they made decisions that companies would spend 6 or 7 months on in seconds, just because they believed it was the right thing to do for the user experience. And that willingness to completely disrupt its own legacy and products, I think, was key to Apple's success. And when I think about Tim Cook and Apple's current leadership, it appears that Apple's decision-making approach just doesn't have that urgency and fearlessness that it used to have. I think Tim Cook is a brilliant operator, and much of the success of Apple has come through Tim Cook. But his more cautious, measured approach may not be the type of leadership Apple need right now to thrive and be a leader in the AI revolution that's going on. So there's a number of reasons it seems like it's doom and gloom for Apple, but it really isn't. There's actually things that they could do that are quite exciting, and I'm going to go through those now. Number one, I think they need to buy one of the large language model providers, maybe an open source provider, maybe Anthropic, because they have to face a harsh reality, which is that they are so far behind in the foundational large language model game. And that game is important because many devices are going to require specialized LLMs, and clearly they lack the talent for building AI compared to, say, OpenAI or Anthropic or other leading labs. As I've said before, Apple's strategy is about owning hardware and software and really controlling the end-to-end user experience. And that means often buying or owning or building every aspect of the process of building a product. Number two, I'd like to see them build an AI agent-first operating system. So obviously they've historically built the best operating systems out there. macOS, iOS, literally they have changed the world of technology forever. And you may remember from a previous episode when I discussed multi-agent systems that as AI begins to dictate how we interact with technology, the future is going to lie in the operating systems and the ways of working that are designed for agent-to-agent collaboration, as well as human-to-agent collaboration, of course. So imagine an agent operating system that is the backbone of all AI interactions on every single Apple device. With an agent operating system, Apple could create an experience where every phone, iPad, laptop, computer all communicate together with AI agents in a really effective way. Maybe every single app on the App Store becomes an agent that can then interact with the operating system. There's a huge amount of innovation here, and the operating system is a key place that they need to win if they're going to be successful in the future. Number three, I would want to see them go and win big with voice and wearables. The world of voice and wearables has moved really quickly, and Apple have screwed the pooch here. The Vision Pro wasn't that successful. In fact, they're actually thinking about killing it. Meta's Ray-Ban glasses are the first real attempt by a company to reinvent the way we access technology. And voice from AI innovations have taken huge leaps, yet Apple has done almost nothing about it. All of these product areas are inherently a consumer technology and something that Apple should be winning at. So imagine if Apple had wearables, maybe glasses or a watch that was completely voice controlled, just as good as the likes of Open Sesame or 11 Labs, which, to be honest, quite frankly, blew me away. Apple's strength has always been in its integration of hardware and software. So surely it can produce incredible wearables that are better than Meta's. And on top of this, they should be acquiring AI voice companies, whether it's 11 Labs or Sesame or another, and then integrate both the talent and the technology into their business. This isn't a new strategy for Apple. They could do this really well. They've done this before. They actually acquired the talent and technology from a company producing touchscreen devices, which then integrated into becoming a mobile phone known as the iPhone. So they should do this again. And finally, I'm not sure they should actually do this, but 100% long term they have to win here is the robotics market. I think, as I said, it's probably a bit early at the moment for Apple, but really, if I was them, I'd be putting huge R&D investments into developing this type of technology. Because if they get this right, then they'd become a central hub for technology and intelligence of the future. Just like how they managed to make the Mac on the iPhone this central hub of all consumer devices that connect to it perfectly. So I guess in conclusion, I think Apple's at a crossroads here. The story of Apple Intelligence with missed deadlines, internal chaos, public failures, might just be them figuring it out and making a bit of a mess. Or we may be watching a very slow and painful spiral. And I think if Apple doesn't start to act now and make some big decisions, they risk being the Nokia or the BlackBerry of today. Anyway, thanks for listening. Until next time, stay curious and share it with a friend, colleague, or even a rubber duck. See you next week.